Ibrahim Kalin, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
It looks like it's a very dangerous situation. You have launched Operation Olive Branch, and it's directly confronting American-backed forces and the U.S. presence there. How can this be happening?
Well, we've been raising this issue of supporting PYD, YPG by the Americans in the name of fighting ISIS or Daesh for months now, in fact, for almost years. And we haven't really received any convincing answers or positive results from either the American side or from other countries in the region. The reason we had to take this action is precisely because of our national security along our border. There have been a number of attacks, in fact, in total over the last year or so, 700 attacks from this Afrin region controlled by PYD, YPG. And there have been cross-border operations on both sides, etc. So we have raised this issue a number of times, and at the end of the day, of course, we had to take action to protect our border. And as you know, PYD and YPG is PKK Syria branch, and PKK is listed as a terrorist organization in both Europe and the United States, and we cannot let this kind of a terror organization establishing some kind of autonomy or state structure right along our border.
So the acronyms you're talking about refer to the names of these Kurdish groups, some of which are backed by the United States. But is this going to pit two NATO allies against each other? I mean, what measures are you taking, if any, to make sure that you don't enter a hot war with your major NATO ally, the United States?
Well, first of all, Americans are not in the Afrin region. They are mostly in the Manbij region, which is to the east of the Euphrates River. We are talking about the western side of the country, right across the Turkish border. Number two, of course, we coordinate these operations, Olive Branch. We have briefed our allies. We have briefed the United Nations, P5 countries. Our president just spoke to President Macron. He will be speaking to President Putin. He will also be speaking to President Trump tomorrow. And we've been doing this around the diplomatic circles to make sure that everybody understands what we are doing. So we are being transparent with this because our national security is at stake. Let me also underline that, Christian, this is not an operation against the Kurds of Afrin or Syria. This is an operation against a terrorist network that claims to represent the Kurds, but that's just far from the truth because there are thousands of Kurds who do not subscribe to PKK's or PYD's Marxist-Leninist ideology.
Okay.
And you have one of the greatest ironies in modern history where American government has chosen a Marxist-Leninist organization as its ally in Syria.
Well, that's the point. So obviously the Americans are very aware of your sensitivities with these various Kurdish groups, but they say that you also have a joint desire to beat ISIS, and these were the forces that the Americans armed in order for them to beat ISIS so they didn't have to send too many Americans into harm's way. This is what Ash Carter, the former defense secretary, told me about this situation.
We had to protect ourselves, and now we have to sustain the victory. And that means letting the people who live there rule in a way that is better than ISIS ruling. Now, these Kurds actually live there. So the idea that they should govern is, I think, unassailable. I think we do owe it to Turkey as a NATO ally to make sure that, to the extent we can, that those Kurds that are part of that Syrian force that we've helped don't turn their means against Turkey, which, after all, is a NATO friend and a NATO ally.
So you can see that he understands your sensitivities, but these are the fighters, these are the successful fighters, and they're the residents there. Is there anything the U.S. can do to reassure you that these people won't turn their guns or whatever on you, Turkey?
Well, there is one concrete action that the American government can and should take, and it is to collect all the weapons that they have given to PYD, YPG over the last 2 years, because the reason or justification for providing all that military support to PYD, YPG was the fight against ISIS or Daesh. And they told us many times that once Daesh threat is eliminated, there won't be any more support, military support to PYD, YPG. Now ISIS is eliminated, but unfortunately, support or military aid, equipment, ammunition, weaponry, etc., continues to go to these PYD, YPG groups there. So the question is, why are you still supporting them? Because the Daesh threat is not there anymore. How are you going to make sure that they're not going to use these weapons against us or against other Syrians like Arabs or Turkoman or other groups?
The main force that seems to benefit from this NATO on NATO problem here between you and the United States is Russia. How do you feel about that?
If you look at the end result, I mean, cosmetically, it looks like Russia will want to manipulate this, but we haven't seen Russians really going that way in any way. In fact, this has worked on the Syria issue, and we will continue to work, obviously, with the Russians, but we are a NATO ally, and we would like to see our NATO allies, primarily the United States, obviously, stop supporting a group that has been targeting Turkey for 30 years or so.
So finally, let me ask you to comment. I wonder what President Erdogan feels about President Trump. It's quoted, you remember, on the sidelines of the UNGA in September, President Trump said that President Erdogan has become a friend of mine. I think now we're as close as we've ever been, he said. Does your president, share those views, especially at this moment?
Well, they obviously have a good relationship. They develop a good chemistry, and they will be. They have talked many times. They've talked many times, and they've met in person a number of times, and they will be talking again. But there are key issues that we have to resolve really at the leadership level. I think the American-Turkish relationship is just too important, too significant to be damaged or shadowed by groups like PKK, PYD, etc. We have greater strategic interests in the region if we work together for the region, for ourselves, and obviously for the Americans.
Ibrahim Kalin, presidential spokesman, thanks for joining us from Ankara tonight.